Hey, what's up, Gorehounds? So, the topic of tonight's video is going to be me ranting about the fact that slasher movies aren't dead, in spite of the fact that some horror fans believe that the slasher genre has been dead since the late 80s, and that slashers aren't real horror, which I completely disagree with. But anyway, we'll get to that. Um, so yeah, that's untrue because slashers really represent some of our oldest fears. If you go way back to when human beings were just cavemen or Neanderthals, we feared the blades or knives or whatever of the teeth of predators, saber-toothed tigers, and their weapons. So you'd be hiding in a little cave in the dark, looking out of a tunnel, hoping that a predator like a lion or a saber-toothed tiger or whatever, a wolf, wouldn't suddenly turn and see you, and then you'd be trapped and dead. That is one of humanity's oldest fears, and as a matter of fact, that's one of the oldest fears of anything that's been alive. Even on the cellular level, you have little cells get eaten by bigger cells. So I guess for anything that's been conscious, that's just the oldest fear. So, and slasher movies, furthermore, they're worthwhile in the horror genre, in my opinion. In fact, they're one of my favorite subgenres of horror because they make us afraid of what's lurking in the dark, and they make the lurker a real, tangible threat. So first you're afraid of what's in the shadows, what you don't see. But it's not like a supernatural film where nothing necessarily happens, or things happen that you don't understand, like you hear weird noises but nothing comes of it. Something comes of it. There's usually a maniac with a knife, or some kind of creature that's sole purpose is to cut you up and kill you, and that's just such an old fear that everybody shares it. Whether they want to admit it or not, everybody shares it. And I just want to say that as long as there are teenagers around, slasher movies will never die. And of course, there will always be teenagers. Because these types of movies usually involve groups of teenagers going off to a secluded, desolate location, right? That's the general formula. And getting offed by some sort of killer, usually wearing a mask, stereotypically. It doesn't have to be that way. Or some sort of creature that kills them. Even before there were slashers like Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers, you had werewolf movies where someone would get bitten, or vampire or Frankenstein monsters that killed people, went around and yeah. So slasher movies and just the idea of that in general has been around for much longer than the genre. So anyway, in order to prove my argument that slasher movies aren't dead, I'm going to show you what are, in my opinion, 3 great examples of underappreciated slashers that are modern. And by modern, I mean they've come out in like the last 4 or 5 years, all of them. All right, so I'm not going to tell you too much about, or really anything about the plot of these movies. I'm just going to tell you the title, the director, and then show you a scene. These are some slasher movies that are fairly well known, but they're not as well known as, say, Friday the 13th or A Nightmare on Elm Street, which are, unbelievably popular horror franchises. They're not that popular. So anyway, my 3 great examples of underappreciated modern slashers. Number 1, The Strangers, made in 2008 and filmed by Brian Bertino. So here's a scene of that movie. All right, number 2, The Collector, filmed in 2009 and directed by Marcus Dunstan. Here's a scene of that movie. All right, and finally, number 3, Laid to Rest, filmed in 2009 and directed by Robert Hall. Here's a scene from that movie.
Why are we out here, Johnny? We could have stayed home for some loving.
His truck's gone.
So?
Baby, look, I'm all emotional and shit here.
Why'd you drag me out of bed in the middle of the night for?
Look, I saw Tucker with some black-headed girl heading down Route 28.
You think he's cheating on Cindy?
I never figured Tucker for the type. That lying sack of shit. But I saw what I saw. Now I gotta go in there. I gotta wake my sister up and tell her.
Whose car is that? Crime skull? Crumbs kill?
Maybe it's his horse.
Baby, why don't you just wait till the morning when y'all ride to work together?
Hold on, Jamie. I'm dying to know who this bitch is.
Hell, maybe I should see who you've been texting, mister. Baby, you never cheat on me now, would you?
Baby, I would never cheat on you. And I never have.
Alright, so now that you've seen all three of those scenes, I'm not going to explain how they tie into the plot, because I feel in my past videos I've done that a little too much, and I might have ruined things for people who haven't seen the movies yet. Even though most of the movies I do are immensely popular, most horror fans will have already seen them, but in this case, they're not quite as popular, and if you haven't seen it, I don't want to ruin the experience for you. I want you to be able to enjoy it. So if you like what you saw, maybe check out a trailer, and yeah, I highly recommend those movies. So, for my slashers movies aren't dead argument, in closing, I just want to say that good slasher movies, because they do exist many very bad ones, there exist some terrible slasher movies, definitely. In fact, there's probably more bad ones than good ones, just because directors seem to think that they're easy to make, which is false. They're very difficult to make, but anyway, that's a different video. So in closing, I'd like to say that good slasher movies make you afraid of what could happen. And admittedly, supernatural movies do the same thing, but then slasher movies go a step further. They make you afraid of what's lurking in the shadows, of what could happen, and then the slasher movies have the boogeyman jump out from the shadows, and they have a real, tangible threat. That's why, in my opinion, this is purely my opinion, slasher movies do more to terrify you when they're both suspenseful and horrifying and in your face at the same time, in different scenes. So, yeah, supernatural films tend to not do that quite as much. You do have some good supernatural films like The Ring and, with killers, the girl comes out of the TV and so forth, but I think slasher films present a more tangible threat from the shadows, and if the suspense is done right, which in a lot of cases it isn't, unfortunately, but if it's done right, like in the movies I just listed, then the slasher movie can be effective and can induce nightmares and so forth. It can be a great horror movie. And also, so yeah, slasher movies, they just exploit one's imagination as well as the grim reality of the twisted stories you hear in the news all the time, like abductions, kidnappings, rape, dismemberment, necrophilia. I could go on and on, but yeah, they bring those sorts of nightmares to life that everyone wants to sort of push to the side and pretend it's not there. And I don't think supernatural movies do that to quite the same extent. Supernatural movies can invoke your imagination, but slasher movies invoke your imagination in such a way that you imagine things that in a lot of cases could actually happen, and I think that makes it all the more terrifying. Anyway, started comparing supernatural movies there even. Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't have much to do with this. So yeah, in closing, slasher movies aren't dead. They'll be around as long as teenagers are around. And yeah, you should definitely check out those 3 movies that I listed. Anyway, that's about all I have to say. So until next time, Gorehounds, see you later.